There's one reason America has defended Taiwan for 75 years, and it has nothing to do with democracy. And right now, in the Arizona desert, that reason is quietly disappearing. The United States is building a backup plan, and the moment it's finished, Taiwan becomes optional. This is the story of how America is repositioning to walk away from one of the most critical flashpoints on the planet, and almost nobody's talking about it. Here's the thing that doesn't get explained properly. The US and Taiwan don't have a defense treaty. They haven't had one since 1979. What they have is something called the Taiwan Relations Act, a law, not a promise, that says the US will help Taiwan maintain the ability to defend itself. It deliberately does not say, America will show up with aircraft carriers if China invades. That gap between will help Taiwan arm itself and will go to war for Taiwan is called strategic ambiguity. And it's been the cornerstone of US policy in the Pacific for almost half a century. Keep both sides guessing. Don't let China feel certain enough to invade. Don't let Taiwan feel certain enough to declare independence. Stay in the middle. It sounds insane. It's actually worked for 75 years. But something changed in 2024 and 2025 that nobody in Washington wants to say out loud. The strategic calculation that made Taiwan worth defending is starting to shift. And the reason is chips. Taiwan produces roughly 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. Not just phones, not just laptops. The chips inside every fighter jet, every AI server, every guided missile. Every piece of American military hardware runs on Taiwan silicon. Specifically, it runs on chips from one company, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. This gave birth to what strategists call the Silicon Shield. The theory is simple. Taiwan is so indispensable to the global economy that no rational actor, not even China, would dare destroy it. To take Taiwan by force is to nuke the global chip supply. The US loses. China loses. Every country with a military, a car industry, or a hospital loses. The invasion doesn't happen because the cost is too catastrophic. For decades, this was Taiwan's real protection, not the US Navy. Not F-16s, chips. But here's where it gets interesting. And alarming if you're in Taipei. The Silicon Shield only works if the chips are in Taiwan. The moment those chips move somewhere else, the shield evaporates. And that's exactly what's happening right now. In March 2025, TSMC's CEO stood next to President Trump at the White House and announced a $165 billion investment in the United States, 5 new chip factories in Phoenix, Arizona, 2 advanced packaging facilities, a major R&D center, the largest single foreign direct investment in American history. Trump called it a win. And for America, it absolutely is. But in Taiwan, former presidents and opposition politicians called it something else: a protection fee, a ransom. And they weren't entirely wrong. Because this is what Trump said about Taiwan, in his own words, before he was even inaugurated. Taiwan should pay us for defense. You know, we're no different than an insurance company. Taiwan doesn't give us anything. That's the President of the United States, describing the defense of a democratic island of 23 million people as an insurance premium that hadn't been paid. And when Trump asked what it would take to keep American protection in place, Taiwan answered with $165 billion and the keys to its most prized industrial asset. The TSMC Arizona fab started producing chips in 2025. Yield rates at the Phoenix facility now reportedly match Taiwan's home fabs. The US is getting what it came for, and Taiwan's leverage is shrinking with every wafer that comes off the line in the desert. Here is the absurd situation Taiwan now finds itself in. For decades, Taipei's survival strategy was to make itself so economically essential to the US that Washington could never afford to let it fall. The Silicon Shield, it worked brilliantly. America was deeply structurally dependent on Taiwan's chips, and that dependency created a military commitment, so expensive to abandon that it kept the peace. But then America decided it didn't want to be dependent anymore. And Taiwan, desperate to keep Washington happy, helped them achieve it. The US Commerce Secretary made this explicit in September 2025. Howard Lutnick said flat out, if 95% of US chip demand runs through Taiwan, America can't resupply its own military in a war. He proposed a 50-50 split, half the chips made in the US, half in Taiwan. Taiwan rejected the proposal. But TSMC's $165 billion Arizona expansion is already doing exactly that anyway. One analyst described it this way: Taiwan spent 40 years building a shield. And now it's handing pieces of that shield to the country. That was supposed to be defending it. There's a term for this inside Taiwan's national security establishment. They call it the hollowing out problem, and it terrifies them. Now here's where you have to read between the lines. Because what American officials say and what American policy documents say are two very different things. Trump, when asked in February 2025 whether the US would defend Taiwan against a Chinese invasion, said, "I never comment on that. I don't want to ever put myself in that position." That sounds like strategic ambiguity, the traditional policy, business as usual. But the 2025 National Security Strategy released in December 2025 did something no document in 46 years had done. It failed to mention the One China policy. Not revised, not updated, just gone. Analysts called it a tacit move, away from the diplomatic foundation that has governed the Strait since 1979. At the same moment, America sold Taiwan an $11 billion weapons package and pushed Taipei to dramatically increase defense spending. On paper, that's a commitment to Taiwan's defense. But there's another way to read it. America is arming Taiwan to defend itself, because America is no longer certain it will be there to do it. The message to Taipei, whether intentional or not, is becoming clear. Build your own military. Pay for your own chips. Don't count on the cavalry. None of this happens in a vacuum. China has been watching all of this, the political signaling, the chip factories opening in Arizona, the ambiguity about whether America would actually fight, and its military has been rehearsing invasion scenarios around Taiwan with increasing regularity and scale. The working theory among US defense analysts has been that China's military would be ready for a credible Taiwan invasion by around 2027. That's not a doomsday prediction. That's the assessment from the Pentagon's own internal planning documents. What's changed is the question of American resolve. A China that believes the US will absolutely go to war over Taiwan is a China that has to think very hard before acting. A China that believes the US might let Taiwan go, especially if its chips are already in Arizona, is a China doing an entirely different calculation. Strategic ambiguity kept the peace because it made China uncertain. The problem is that it's starting to make Taiwan uncertain too. Here's the most counterintuitive fact in this entire story. Taiwan itself passed a law restricting TSMC from producing its most cutting-edge chips outside Taiwan. The N1 rule: no overseas fab can produce chips more advanced than one generation behind Taiwan's best. Taiwan is legally protecting its own silicon shield, even as it hands billions to the US. And TSMC has maintained this gap deliberately. Arizona builds cutting-edge chips, but not the most cutting-edge. Hsinchu, Taiwan is still where the absolute bleeding edge happens. Taiwan's government calculates that as long as the US still needs that last generation of chips, the shield holds. It's a knife-edge strategy. Stay indispensable enough to matter, but not so indispensable that you become a target. Whether it works depends entirely on a question that no one in Washington, Beijing, or Taipei will answer publicly: how much of Taiwan's chip dominance has to move to Arizona before the strategic math changes. Nobody knows the number. Everyone is watching for it. Here's what we know for certain. The United States is not announcing it's abandoning Taiwan. It doesn't need to. It's building the infrastructure that makes abandonment possible and doing it with Taiwan's own money and Taiwan's own technology, under a deal Taiwan agreed to because it had no other choice. That's not betrayal. That's geopolitics, and it's been the American playbook for a century. The question isn't whether America is preparing to leave. The question is, what happens the day China decides the math has finally shifted in its favor? Because there's a country on the other side of the Pacific that has been watching those Arizona fab construction cameras very closely, and it has its own timeline. We covered what China's military buildup actually looks like from the ground, and why the 2027 deadline is more real than most people realize.